Hey, welcome back to the lecture. So now let's do this exercise. Write a program to create car model structure discussed. So this is a car model structure you have to create. Let's see how to create this in our program. I have just created a new project struct init. So this is my project name and let's create the structure. So usually structure definition is created outside the function. So you can even create inside the function, no problem with that. But it is usually done outside the program or in the header file. It's better if you create the structure definition in the header file. Let's first create here itself in the main.c. So let's write the struct keyword and let's give the tag name car model. And after that, open the curly brackets. So you can open here itself or you can do something like this. And now let's create the member elements. So member elements are car number, car price, car maximum speed, and car weight. I just created the member elements of this structure. So after that, let's create two variables. So that's what our example says. Again, you can create either local variables or global variables. So for this, we can create local variables. So now how to create a variable? First, you have to mention the data type. So this is a data type. And after that, let me type car BMW and car Ford. So these are the two variables. We have to initialize the variables by using these data. So these data you have to use for variable 1 and this data you have to use for variable 2. So now there are two ways to initialize these variables. So one is you initialize here itself when you define the variables. That we can do something like this. So now let's start with only one variable to make the explanation simple. So here itself you can initialize this variable using assignment operator is equal to. You have to open the curly bracket and then you have to start mentioning the values for these member elements. So let's say I mentioned 0, 0, 0, 0. So now you just initialized all these member elements to 0 or whatever the data given in the exercise. So let's use the data given in the exercise. Remember that there is a one-to-one mapping between the order in which you have used the values and the order in which the member elements appear. So for example, 2021 will be stored in car number. This will be stored in car price, like that. So order is important here. Let's create the second variable. Let's call car Ford and let's use the values given in the exercise. So we just created two variables of the structure and we initialized them. Let's try to compile this. So it compiles well. So there is a warning because these two variables are unused. That's fine. So we just tried this method. This is also called as C89 method. So this method was introduced in C89 and here the order is important. After that, C99 standard introduced this method. Here the order is not important, but you have to use designated initializers using dot operator. Let's try to use C99 method to initialize the structure variable. Very simple. Let's go to the project. So what I can do here is, let me create one more variable here. Let's call it as struct car model car Honda is equal to. So let's open and close the curly bracket. So here I can initialize this member element first. To do that, what you have to do is you have to use the dot operator, dot. Then you have to mention this member element name is equal to, let's say 90.90. This is also valid. So here order is not important. You just use dot operator and use the member element which you want to initialize. You can give comma and then give the dot operator and then press control space. Eclipse will give some suggestion about the member elements. Then you can select whatever you want. car price is equal to 15,000. Let's print each and every member elements of this structure. For that, we have to understand accessing structure members. So when a structure variable is created, use a dot operator to access the member elements. Let's use the dot operator. Let's go back to the code and let's use a printf. Printf, let's say details of car BMW is as follows. First, let's print car number is equal to %u/n. So now how to access the member element car number? So for that, first you have to use the structure variable and then give the dot operator, and after that select member element car number. That's it. That's how you access the member element of a structure variable. Let me quickly finish this for other member elements. So I just completed all these printfs to print different member elements. And after that, now let's print the details of this variable. So I just used printf to print the details of all the member elements of these structure variables. Let's say you want to change the value of member elements of some structure variables. Let's say you want to override these initialized values. You can do that by, again, assigning new values to the member elements of the structure variable. Let's say if I want to change the value of car number of car Ford, I can do that. So just mention the member element, and after that just mention the structure variable, then select the member element, let's say car number, and then you can assign some different value. So this is called assigning a new value to the member element of a structure variable. The takeaway from this lecture is you should understand how to create a structure record. This is also called a structure definition. So usually we create this in the header file, but it's okay if you create in .c file also, but make sure that it is present outside the function. You can even keep it inside the function, but that is not a correct method. I can even keep this here itself, but that doesn't look good because it's a record. Let's keep that outside. And after that, you create the variable something like this, where you first mention the data type. So data type in this case is user defined data type, that is struct car model, and then create as many variables as you want, either globally or locally. That depends on your application. So this is how you optionally initialize the structure variable when you define them. This is actually optional, but it helps when you use constant structure. For example, I can also use const here. If you use const, for example, let's say I use const here. So you already studied about const. So in that case, this will help you to initialize at the first place. So if you use const here, what happens? So each and every member element of this structure variable will become constant variables. So now you are trying to modify one of the member element here. So this will give you an error. You can check that. So let's try to compile this, and there is an error. This is read only. And if you want to access the member elements of a structure variable, then use dot operator. With that note, I would like to end this lecture. So in the next lecture, let's understand aligned, unaligned data access and structure padding. I'll see you in the next lecture.